It's like,
Is that someone?
we're gonna compose.
Mhm. Is he? Oh, wonderful.
So can you send her a message and ask if she wants to?
Address the participants at all?
Yeah. She doesn't reply. And just. Maybe if she wants to say.
We'll just wait another maybe 4 or 5 minutes just to give any, latecomers an opportunity to join us. Yeah, great.
You know what? Checks.
started now. It's 6:05, so if any latecomers join us, they'll be able to pick up where we're at. So welcome to our capital planning community engagement meeting. Next slide, please. We have our full team here, which I'll briefly introduce. My name is Daniela Quesada. I'm the Chief Architect for the Capital Improvement Department. We have Alex Hoffman, our CID Assistant Director for Planning. We have our two urban design managers, Marcela Tolini and Apolonia Roldan, who are handling our virtual space, but will also help us address your questions during the survey portion. So let me give you a quick rundown of how tonight's going to be. So we're going to have a presentation for you all. It's going to be followed by a short Q&A. And then afterwards, we'll have a survey. And then after that, we'll have another longer open question and answer session. For those Q&A sessions, we ask that any questions that are not pertinent to the capital planning process and the content that we're presenting to you, we're going to give you some comment cards to make sure that we capture all that and we direct them to the correct department or person who could best address that. And anything that's pertinent to what we can address at today's meeting, we ask that you please join us up here in the front. This is our device that is both our microphone, our speaker, and our camera, which will make it possible for all the participants that are online to hear your question, hear your comments, and then that way everyone is equally participating in the meeting. And so today's presentation is really to walk you through what public engagement really is and how that's different than your traditional just outreach, and why it matters, and how the input that we get from you during this process, how that is going to inform potential project selection for the future. And so it's very important that we get your input now through this meeting, through the survey questions, because all of that is going to be part of all the data that we aggregate together. And that will be presented to our city leaders so they can take informed decisions about what you as a community prioritize, what you'd like to see as improvements, what kind of amenities you'd like to see, what are things you won't want to see, etc. And so to kind of orient you to our online platform, we have put some QR codes at the table on the center, which you could either use your phone to take a photo of or just type it. It's a very simple webpage, www.elevateep.com. The reason we want to direct you to this is because that's where we're going to have all our content for the survey as well as the presentation. So if you all want to take a minute to log in, that way you could follow along. And I also want to walk you through the meeting agenda while you do that. Now that you've met our internal city staff, and I've given you a little bit of the lay of the land as far as how this meeting is going to be conducted, I'd like to open up the floor to Representative Lisa Raga from District 8, who's joining us virtually, if she would like to address the crowd.
Oh, good morning. Good morning. I'm sorry. Yes. Hi. Do you want me to give you my comments right now, Daniela, or should I just want to welcome everybody. Thank you, city staff who are always so amazing. I want to thank you for all your hard work and dedication to our beautiful city of El Paso. And it's a pleasure to be here with everyone this evening. Are you going to be coming back to me, right, for my comments? Or should I give them now, Daniela? Sorry.
You're welcome to give them now, Representative. That'll be a nice intro into everything.
Okay. So I just wanted to share some of what I discussed at the City Council's recent strategic planning sessions, during which we made additions to the city's strategic plan, the document that guides our city government into the future over the next decade or so. While not all of the items I brought up relate directly to capital planning, I think it may be helpful for you all to understand the angle that I am approaching this discussion from. I shared 3 large-scale challenges to overcome and 3 major areas of focus for the future. The 3 large-scale challenges to overcome. COVID-19, right? That's on everybody's mind. It has an impact on so many aspects of the city's work. Public health services need to be robust and prepared for the future. Another thing we discussed was our fund balance and emergency funds saved us. So we will need to continue to build those up as we have done in the recent years. And of course, work our way back to fully staffing and reopening our cultural and recreational facilities, et cetera. I know everybody's anxious and eager for that to happen. Another thing that we discussed was expansion and sprawl. An increased and sustained focus on infill development is important, and we should consider being even more aggressive in encouraging it. Addressing the culturally and economically sensitive revitalization of our core neighborhoods will go a long way toward addressing this challenge. We should be wary of sprawl and make sure continued expansion that does happen is self-sustaining. And of course, we discuss global climate change. We can't ignore the increasing challenges that climate change will bring. We have already seen a massive increase in rainfall this year after we suffered the effects of the intense winter storm in February. And we need to make sure we are prepared to get through future adverse events. Do our part to address climate change through a greater focus on sustainability, as mentioned before. And then the three major areas of focus for the future that I discussed was sustainability and resilience. Sustainable energy, distributed generation, DG capacity at some city facilities with a yearly goal for a continued expansion. Mandating sustainable construction practices for the city's hired contractors and their subcontractors. We need to also work with our partners like the El Paso Chamber, El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Workforce Solutions, Borderplex, et cetera, UTEP, EPCC, to better access and address the needs of smaller local businesses to improve our local economic resilience and leave us better prepared to weather a future disaster like the COVID-19 pandemic, Winter Storm Uri, or the monsoon flooding. Improved housing options and infill development. We need greater focus on infill development and boosting the vitality of El Paso's core neighborhoods. Prioritize targeting for low-income housing locations based on a strictly data-driven process with a stated goal of revitalizing the core, and then further streamlining processes for planning, permitting, and inspections. We also should look at adjusting impact fees so they reasonably cover the true costs of new development in order to protect taxpayers and utility ratepayers. And lastly, expanded citizen access to city government and services, improving the public face of the city, showing off our good governance, and explaining our processes in a clear way that furthers public understanding of local government. Improve the 311 system for better user experience, easier case tracking, and improved feedback for users. Expand access to services for senior citizens, including by creating a dedicated information stream on the city website and social media to keep seniors informed and to keep seniors informed and assist them with senior-specific services, such as senior and disabled tax exemptions, senior centers, social security assistance, etc. And then lastly, better sharing of city data via an online portal with direct citizen access. And lastly, it's important to celebrate our successes. In 2021, we were named an All-American City for the third time in just 4 years. And that doesn't just happen out of nowhere. It has taken a lot of hard work from our thousands of excellent employees and strong guidance from our leadership. People don't always get the full picture of El Paso and what we have to offer. So we need to find innovative ways to share our story to our citizens and the world at large. Thank you, Daniela.
Thank you, Representative Lisa Raga.
All right, thank you, Representative. As Daniela mentioned at the top, my name is Alex, and I lead our capital planning division. So what we want to do right now is we want to go to our city website if we can. And what I want to do is just run through a little bit of an overview of why we're doing the survey tonight, as well as what capital planning is and what we're looking to accomplish. So as Daniela mentioned at the top, what we want to do is we want to do a survey. And so the reason that we want to do a survey is because, again, we want to know from a priority perspective what the citizens of El Paso want, what they want to see in their neighborhoods. We're going to use these results to help us inform city council, to help them make the decision in terms of how they decide what projects are going to be selected and part of this bond conversation. The type of questions that we're going to ask are some demographic questions, and also to help us prioritize within broad categories the types of improvements that you want to see. There aren't going to be specific mentions of specific projects, and that's going to come later once we make this presentation with the findings to all of city council. The goal is that we want to, again, take this information, present it to city council to help them make a data-informed decision. So if you can scroll down a little bit. All right, so again, what we're here to discuss tonight is capital planning. So in a nutshell, what capital planning is that we're looking out for the next 5 to 7 years to see what are the needs of the community. And this is a process that helps inform that decision. So there's a lot of studies that the city has conducted, but then also knowing, besides the consultant-driven type of process that we get, feedback from our departments on, we also want to know from the constituents, what are your priorities to make sure that we're prioritizing the right types of improvements and projects. So as Representative Lizarraga had said, really our guiding document in terms of how we prioritize and what the big ideas are that we want to look at is the strategic planning process. So the city has gone through this process a number of times. We started with the 20 in 2020, and then we followed it up with the 25 by 2025. And then in this past year in December, we looked to update our strategic plan again, with the goal being that we want to have 30 big goals for 2030. And so one of those big goals that was identified by city council and city leadership was to direct staff to look to begin the development of a bond. And so that's really why we're here tonight and why the timing is now. Then we want to just be also to differentiate between public outreach and public engagement. So traditionally, I think what we have involved the public with and done a really good job of is public outreach. And so this is where we know the specific projects that are identified. That's when we tell you this is the cost, this is what it's going to have in terms of an impact to you as a taxpayer. That's not where we're at right now. That comes later in the process, and I'll show how that falls into what we're going to look to accomplish between now and November, when a tentative bond election could be called if council decides to do that. But again, that's where we're going to be knowing specifically what the projects are. And so again, that's not what we're here to discuss tonight. What we are here to discuss tonight is public engagement. So public engagement is where we're really focusing on some big ideas. We want to know, what are the priorities that we need to be looking at, so that way when council does make the decision of specific projects, they know what the priorities are. So the way that we're looking to do that is to ask through the survey the types of questions or bullet points that are seen here. So quantifiable tools, real-time feedback, and spatial and geographic data. And so you'll see that the way that we've structured the questionnaire is that we're looking to capture all of these things. We want to know specifically, if you're here from District 1 or District 8 or another district here tonight downtown, what are the needs and priorities of the district that you live in to help inform the representative, like Representative Lizarraga, to know what are the community needs of District 8. Let's throw it down a little bit more. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take that information and we're going to present it to City Council. So one of the things that we're looking to do is that, right now we're up to about 850 responses. We're closing in on 1,000, so we're getting really good feedback. We want to take that information and present that to City Council. And what we want to do is be able to demonstrate, what are the priorities again, spatially throughout the city. What are the types of projects that maybe we should be prioritizing, but then also validate it against other data that we're collecting. And that's where we're going to start to look at things like equity. So where are communities where traditionally we don't invest in? Do we need to be prioritizing investment in those areas? Looking at, are there service gaps? So are there locations that need senior centers, if that's one of the priorities that comes out, or if it's streets? We need to be looking at where we have service gaps. And finally, making sure that we use all this information to make data-informed decision. So this will lead to project selection. So again, project selection is going to take place at the time of the public outreach phase. What we want to make sure that we do when we do public, or when we do project selection, is making sure that it's objective. So we don't want it to be just the squeaky wheel approach. Whoever complains the most gets the project. We want it to be very much data driven, which is the second point. We also want to make sure that if we're doing these processes, that they can be replicated. So that way, when we go through this process again, people know and reasonably know what to expect in the future. And that's going to lead to the last point, which is consistent inputs. So again, we want it to be replicatable. So that way, everybody, even though you may not agree with the results, know the process that was undertaken to get us there. So the next point that we want to make is about project funding. So even though we're here to discuss tonight the idea of developing a bond, we do want to make clear that there's lots of ways that the city can fund projects. So if there's something that you really want to see and you don't see it on the bond, doesn't mean that, if your opinion doesn't matter, that nothing can change. We're using this process to help inform decision-making, generally speaking. So there's other ways, specifically how city council collects property taxes. They can prioritize the budget in those ways as well. And so even if you don't see the project on the bond, there's still possibilities that we could do it through grant funding or some type of matching grant or something like that. So there's other opportunities to get the projects funded. More. Okay, so the process that we're in. So again, what we had said at the top, that we're starting with community engagement. So that's where we're at right now, early winter. We're going to be working with council then based on the findings of this process that we're going through right now to go to project selection. That's when we know how big of a bond, how much is it going to cost, those types of things. Council ultimately will decide in terms of what the projects that will be making up the bond will be. We'll come back to the public in summer where we'll start the public outreach process. And we're going to follow the public outreach process all the way through the November election. So I don't want to make it seem like it just suddenly ends when the bond introduction ordinance gets put in place August 2nd. But just to be clear, that's when that process starts. So after we do the public outreach, we would need to decide by August 2nd or before whether or not they're going to call for a bond election. That's through the bond introduction ordinance, which then they'll call the election November 8th if they decide to do that. So it's growing a little bit more. So then to talk a little bit, more in terms of months. So from February to April, we're going to go through a public engagement process. So we're here tonight. We still have several meetings specifically with each of the districts. We also have a West Side meeting still to come. And so we're looking to take all those data points and feedback to make a presentation, hopefully to council sometime in April. Then in spring is when we make the project selection. So that's going to be May to July. We'll come back, we'll know what the projects are. And then that will lead us to our public outreach for the summer. And then all of that will then, of course, lead up then to our drop dead date of August 2nd for the bond introduction ordinance, where council will ultimately decide whether or not there will in fact be a bond. So let's scroll down a little bit more. So the last thing I want to do, just to make sure that we're making this clear connection between the strategic plan and projects being built. This video demonstrates some of the projects that have been completed as a result of our strategic planning process. So we can play that now. Appreciate it. Thank you. So hopefully you get the idea in terms of the types of projects that we can do through this process, and hopefully that excites you a little bit about what's possible. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marcelo, who's going to lead us through the actual survey. And so
at
really
this point,
appreciate
I'll also be troubleshooting if anybody wants to follow the survey with their phone. Yeah. We also have some printed surveys for you all too, but
Can we fill it out on our phone?
Yes,
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 yeah.
we would prefer that.
Yeah, that's preferable. So if anybody has any questions on that, I'll be happy to help. I also have, like I said, printed surveys if somebody prefers a paper survey.
So for the people online, if you want to go to the website, it's elevateep.com or using the QR code we showed at the beginning. This is really important because this is where we get your input and what's important to you individually. So if you go to the website and you, on the landing page, you just click take the survey. And then you can click take the survey. And the first question is, do you prefer it in English or Spanish? And then just start the survey. So the first question or the first item we're asking you is for you to enter your email. These emails will be kept and then you will get updates on future meetings and the development of this process. So it's really important that we get your email so we can reach you further along. The second question is, in which city council district do you reside? If you are unsure, there's a link right there where you can go and you type in your address and it'll tell you the district. But if you want, you can just click on the drop-down menu if you already know and just pick your district. Does anybody here have any questions on district? No? Okay. The third question is just to geolocate where you are, and it's asking your 5-digit zip code. Okay, this is another question that is for location. If you can please write the major intersections and please write 2 streets that intersect each other. This is so we are able to locate on a map closer than just by zip code. So please write in 2 streets for this question. The fifth question is very straightforward, is do you rent or own your home, or do you live with family, or if you prefer not to say?
And if you need any questions, to be elaborated on, please let us know. Or if we're going too fast, too slow.
Okay, so this is basically the 4 divisions where our survey divides into. And so we're asking you to rank the following project areas from highest to lowest. The highest, number 1, should reflect the type of projects that you feel are most important to you in your daily life. If you're doing it online, you can just grab and then drag and drop. So if you have safe, high quality, complete streets, park and recreation and quality life facilities, economic development, solar energy, and climate change. If anybody has any questions, please let me know. Okay, so this is starting to get a little more focused. And it's as the city makes investments in streets and transportation infrastructure, which types of investments do you feel are most important? Rank the following choices from most to least. And again, it's the same type of drag and drop. And do you prioritize investments that prioritize safety, such as crosswalks and street lighting? Investments that improve pavement quality? Investments that expand the availability of bicycle facilities and trails? Investments that reduce congestion, traffic, and vehicle emissions? And also, or addressing stormwater and flooding. So again, just drag and drop. This is the first of the 4 subjects from the previous question. This is based on streets. Okay, so as the city makes investments in streets and transportation infrastructure, what locations do you feel are most important? Now, this is a different type of question. It asks you to rank less important, equally important, or more important. From residential, lower traffic streets in residential areas, high traffic streets that make people from one area of El Paso to another, high traffic streets within commercial areas that you would consider a destination for goods and services or entertainment, streets in areas where the city's investment in the area has historically been low. So for all of them, please provide an answer, and they can be less, equally, or more important. So this is another subject. This is on parks and recreation. Where should the city focus its investments in the new or refurbished parks and recreation facilities? Rank the following choices from the most important to least important. Areas where the data indicates a gap in service, existing parks and recreation facilities in need of modernization, areas where the city's investment in parks has historically been low, areas where recent growth lacks nearby parks and recreation facilities, and quality of life facilities. Please drag and drop your preference from most to least. And again, on this one, we have now changed into another area, which is parks and recreation. Now, this is another type of question. And it's also in reference to parks and recreation. As the city makes investments in new parks and recreational facilities, which type of facilities do you feel are most appropriate? Please choose two. Large regional parks and facilities like the Beast, smaller neighborhood parks within walking distance of neighborhoods, investment in new equipment and infrastructure for existing parks, facilities specific to certain sports or activities like football fields or indoor courts, and E, other quality of life facilities like museums and libraries. So for this one, please choose two. Then just click on it. This is still within the Parks and Recreation. Choose the type of quality of life facilities that you are most likely to use in your daily life. This is another question where you need to please choose two. So it's outdoor playing fields, indoor recreational facilities, competition grade aquatics facilities, linear parks and improved trails, open space, and natural unimproved trails, museums, libraries, and cultural facilities. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So this is for now, we are going into economic development. How should the city focus its economic development programs and investments? Rank the following options from most important to least important. Again, this is another drag and drop type of question. Attracting large, big name businesses and retailers with high job potential. Supporting small and local businesses, meeting local needs and creating fewer jobs individually, but large number of jobs collectively. Supporting businesses and industries that align with the goals of the regional partners like UTEP. Supporting physical improvements to businesses districts like streets, sidewalks, and parking. Investments that support creating expanded housing options. This is another drag and drop, please. From most to least important, from 1 to 5. Next. Okay. As the city develops economic development programs, what geographic areas do you feel are most important to focus on? So for this one, please choose two. A, downtown. B, the district where I live in, and this is just a generic picture of an area of El Paso, but we will correlate it with the district that you said you lived in on question 2. Along high priority transportation corridors. D, on vacant lots or abandoned existing buildings within existing neighborhoods. Or E, location doesn't matter. Please choose 2. Okay. What type of investment do you feel are most appropriate for the city in addressing energy and climate change? Rank the following choices from most to least appropriate. Is the most important and 4 least appropriate. Investments in solar, like rooftop solar installations for city-owned facilities. Transit and mobility investments that will help reduce vehicle emissions and traffic congestion. Investments in electric vehicles and charging stations. Investments to reduce energy costs and energy use in city facilities. So again, just drag and drop for your preference from 1 to 4. Does anybody have any questions on this? No? Okay, so we are now into the tourism part. Choose the type of tourism facilities that you would love to see in El Paso that are currently not available. This is another choose 2. So A, ecotourism that supports camping grounds near the mountains and creates experience destinations. B, ecotourism that supports robust local mountain biking and events with supporting facilities to draw national competitions. C, ecotourism that celebrates our riverfront amenities and supports local farming businesses. And D, heritage tourism that celebrates our history as a city, specifically our downtown core and traditional neighborhoods. Please choose 2. So the last question is an open-ended question, and we do read these. And so for this is, did we miss anything? Please share any comments or concerns you would like to include regarding this project areas we have not addressed. Now this, please, this is in regards to the presentation you have just seen, and we do read all of these answers. So you can, whatever you feel like we missed, please address it there, and we will open it up for questions.
Yeah, so thank you, Marcella, for taking us through the survey. So again, this last question is really focusing on, we try to formulate the questions at the beginning based on the conversations that were had during the strategic planning session. So we recognize that that can't possibly cover everything or necessarily represents every idea that each of you may have. And so if there's something, a type of project or an idea that you think is really important that wasn't in here, that's where the opportunity exists to do that. Before we do open up for questions and answers, if we could go really quickly to the live results, just because we do want to be really clear that, one of the things that we're doing here and why we're having these meetings in person and online and why we're asking you these questions is because we do want you to know that your opinion does matter. So, since we last talked, we're now up to 873 responses. So this website, what it's doing is it's automatically populating the results. For those of you who do it in paper, we do take it and then we put it in here so that way your opinion is represented and shown here on this dashboard. This dashboard is updated automatically every 5 minutes. So as the responses come in, you'll see this data refresh. So how it looks today isn't necessarily how it's going to look tomorrow. We're looking to keep this open at least through the end of the month. And again, what we're looking to do with this information and the feedback that you provide is to take that, put a presentation together for City Council to prioritize, to help them again with the project selection process. And so again, we just want to really reinforce that, your opinion does matter. And, if we're missing stuff, we are going to collect that. We will present that information as well to city council. So that way they're getting everybody's perspective on this process. So with that, I open it up to any questions here in the room or online. If you have a question online, if you can please type it in the chat. And so that way we can best address it. So any questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, the question or the input on 16 that I might have
Yes, sir.
has to fall into the category that we covered.
I'm gonna repeat the question. Sorry. So the question in person was whether or not the answer to question 16 needed to be reflected in one of the questions that was in the survey. And to answer your question, no, it doesn't need to. We did want it to be, generally related to the process that we're going through the bond development. Talking about a project that wasn't completed from a long time ago isn't necessarily important, but knowing, for example, that there was something that we did miss, absolutely, please provide that feedback.
How aggressive does that project have to be?
It doesn't need to be aggressive, or it can be very aggressive.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, it's anything from, I'd like to see a street repaved to, hey, there's a really big project, a really great idea that I didn't see reflected in here. Those are all things, because again, we're gonna provide that feedback, and so if we miss something, it would be a really good opportunity for council to know that.
okay.
Any other questions?
And if we ask if you could please come up to the microphone so everybody can hear you well. And I'm taking down notes and, whatever comments you might have as well.
I have a question online.
Yes.
It is, where is the priority to address water issues in El Paso?
So if I'll start talking, and if this is not on topic and they're asking about something else, then please clarify. But specifically on water. So one of the questions that we are asking about is about stormwater and flooding. So if it's related to stormwater and flooding, we are asking about that. Now, if it's access to new water sources or investing in infrastructure that maybe is keep in mind that we are in the middle of the desert, we didn't ask questions about that. And truthfully, that's it's something that El Paso Water really takes the lead on in terms of making sure that we have an adequate water source. So if there's a follow-up comment or anything, I can provide additional information, but specifically on the flooding issue, we did ask that question and want to see if that's a priority for citizens.
No, the question is more related. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, it's more related to coordinating the water department, UTEP studies on underground aquifers throughout the east and west side of the mountains and into Juarez. There's a lot of studies, and they could be done and aren't being done to locate good drinking water in the aquifers. And so it's just seems to me that it could be better coordinated from a higher level, like at the city.
No, thank you for that feedback. And like Daniela mentioned, we are capturing that feedback. Also, the representative is still online, so she's hearing those comments firsthand. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Don't have to be shy. Does anybody want to discuss anything that they wrote down for question 16? This is your opportunity to pitch your idea. No pressure.
We have a comment online.
Okay.
I will unmute Betty.
Okay. Should mute it.
Can you hear me?
Ma'am.
Yes?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
All right. My name is Debbie Torres. I live in District 6 in the Mission Valley. And I have a couple of comments regarding the placement of a bond for election in November of 2022. And I'd like to give a couple of reasons why I feel that we should not vote for a bond. The first reason is our current debt. Both our general obligation bonds, which are the ones that are voted on by the community, and our certificates of obligation, which are voted on by city council. And I believe recently, maybe within the last 6 months, the city council voted in favor of yet another certificate of obligation. So the debt that the city is in right now, coupled with the amount of payment that it exercises against the debt, is quite extensive. And I just recently got some figures from the Office of Management and Budget. The second issue that I have and feel is a reason why we should not is we have unfinished projects in the city. I can give you 2 examples from my district because that's where I live, and I'm sure that those who are present or listening can think of it, quite a few in their own district. First of all, we recently had a street that runs in front of my house, New Haven, that was totally reconstructed. It took a lot of time with a lot of mistakes that had to be corrected. And I'm not sure why, but the street was, the reconstruction was not completed all the way to the next intersecting street. So when you travel on New Haven, you get to a point that's about a half a mile before it intersects with Roseway, and it's old asphalt. So supposedly this was going to be an additional amendment that was going to be added to the next budget year, but then I believe somehow COVID and who knows what else happened. So basically what we are dealing with is a street that is very narrow in the first place and then ends before it intersects with the next street. That's one example of an unfinished project. And then and also along with unfinished projects are maintenance issues. We have very poor areas in Pueblo Viejo Park that are in disrepair. By that, I mean the asphalt on the tennis and the basketball courts is cracked and is dangerous. People have actually injured themselves because of this. And the walking paths as well are in need of repair. And this is an issue that I still haven't received an answer on, and several people in the area are also concerned about this. So, you know, these are just 2, which I believe very important reasons why I think we need to deal with our debt and finish the projects that are not finished and deal with maintenance issues. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate the feedback. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Salcido Jennings, and as you can probably see, we're here to talk about pickleball, which you all did include as an option for recreational facilities, but it was only listed as indoor. And I just want to know how many of you all actually know what pickleball is? Does any?
We just learned about it.
Oh, you did? Okay. On one of the other meetings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So then I won't go through all that, but for the other people that are here, just a brief description. And it is played with a paddle and something that looks like a wiffle ball. And it needs a dedicated court because it is a very social activity. Amongst being social, it looks much like tennis, but it's really has a very small curve to learning it. If you're injured, it's easier to play. It's great for family activities, and we have a beautiful Sun City here with great climate. So I want to make sure that you all realize that can be an outdoor facility too. And that is such an important piece of the pie, because while we have in El Paso sprinkled courts around El Paso at some of the community centers, they're not dedicated. And because they're not dedicated, it's not enough courts for people to play. Every 20 minutes, 4 more people come on the court, they play, and then every 20 minutes. So what happens if there's one court at one community center, 34 people are showing up and they're waiting over an hour, hour and a half to play, which is great to have that one court, but there are so many people. It's the fastest growing sport in the US. I think it's 34% in the past 3 years. So we have a lot of El Pasoans that go to Ruidoso. They go to Las Cruces because those facilities are bigger. They have 8, and Las Cruces has 8. They're going to 16. Phoenix has, oh my gosh, 3 facilities, 20, 32, 19. And El Paso, we have not one dedicated facility. So we're the only Southwest city that does not have a dedicated facility. So that's what I'm here to ask for.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for providing that comment. So, you know, with facilities that we're missing, the ones that you discussed, that's where I think that question 16 really comes in handy. Just because on one hand, you can definitely vote for a type of facility that maybe is representing the big picture idea, but in terms of getting the specific type of amenity, that's where answering that question to make sure that you know, you're flagging specifically that amenity that will be really helpful, and then we can get that feedback to city council.
Thank you.
No, thank you. We appreciate
Thank you.
Beautiful picture in the survey.
it. Yes. We've been told that.
I have another comment online.
Okay.
They don't have a microphone, so I'm just gonna read it out loud. I do agree with Debbie, as we should be making repairs to all our existing streets without going for more money to build. I know we need to fix things.
Yeah, no, and definitely that's a point that we've been hearing at these meetings. And so, you know, it's really good that, you know, the city council representatives hearing that firsthand, you know, because I think that that's going to obviously be part of the decision-making process in terms of, you know, do they ultimately vote in favor of moving forward with the bond election? And then also helping to determine the question of how much, because we know people obviously have concerns, and it's balancing the needs of the community with, you know, the economic realities. So that is a really important point to be making. And so thank you for bringing that up.
If I may add actually to that, we also have a frequently asked questions fact sheet. I think Marcela has put it on the chat, and it'll be available on the website as well. But to address Ms. Debbie's question about financing and, you know, any additional debt, one of the questions on the fact sheet is, what is the city's financial status and why is it important? And so the answer from our chief financial officer is that over the last 7 years, the city has strengthened its financial stability by eliminating a 7.8 million general fund deficit in 2014. It has tripled the fund balance by increasing it by more than $73 million, achieved 0 audit findings for 6 consecutive years, and has had 7 consecutive years of general fund surplus. As a result, the city of El Paso's financial profile remains sound and stable, with a AA bond rating, which is considered to be a high quality grade and only below a AAA rating. This high quality bond rating results in a strong investor interest and lower interest rates.
Okay, so we still have, you know, a few minutes left. We have the space until 7 o'clock. So if there's any other questions or comments, we can address them now. Otherwise, we don't need to keep you here longer than you want to be. So,
Okay, and
yes.
it's about purple.
My name is Kelly Groves. I live in the Upper Valley. One thing that I'm not sure has been pointed out at the other meetings that is an opportunity with pickleball is it's such a fast growing sport, so that I know people that consider the opportunities to play there if they're going to move to a community. I'm not kidding. And so, I mean, it would have that kind of impact. The other thing is if y'all were ambitious enough to build, say, 12 courts in one spot, that only is the footprint of 3 tennis courts. So we're not talking about a large area. But then the city's in the opportunity to have tournaments at that point, and which would not only just recoup the money you spent on the courts, but would more than pay for maintaining them. And then these tournaments, they bring in hundreds of people. So then you get all the meals that people buy and the hotel rooms that they book and the good experience they have in El Paso, and take that back to wherever. I went 2 weeks ago just to support friends in Phoenix, and we rented an Airbnb and we ate and we drank and we did all the things that you do. And we could have that for ourselves here. So.
Can you tell them how much it was on
The entry fees are $65 per event. Grounds passes were $40. I mean, it was kind of pricey, but a scaled down version of that. This was a very large facility, so they had many more entries than we would accommodate probably, but they brought in well over $100,000 just in entry fees for one weekend. So,
Can I ask a question first?
Yes.
This, the Walmart shooting,
Yes, sir.
permanent,
The sculpture that.
yeah.
Yes.
Is that been capital fund on that?
I don't know, Yvette, do you happen to know? No? Yeah, we'll have to find out that information. I don't happen to know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, because I've been struggling with my city rep to overpower the water utility. They own that ditch along Sunburst. And
What is the question, Alex?
It's a question asking about the memorial at the Walmart site where the shooting took place.
on Ponder Park.
Whether or not who funded that improvement.
That is actually funded through the CID art, the public art component. Sorry, just for the record, Laura Cruz, I'm the communications director for the city. But that is actually part of the city's public art component. And so it's funded through 2% through an ordinance the city council had approved through the 2% funding of all capital projects.
Well, my question is, there's no parking.
So the question that Laura, just say that way everybody can hear, is that there's no parking at the site. And so is your question then about, improving to see?
Fill the drain dish that's there and make parking so that people can visit it right there without having to park at the parking lot and have to walk half a mile over to the site.
So the comment then is just to work with the water utility to fill in the drainage ditch. So that way there's an opportunity for people to park there without having to walk an exceptional distance.
Okay. I don't know what the parking situation will be in that scenario, but I will ask staff.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for the comment. Anything else?
And then,
Sorry.
Go ahead, Bob.
I just wanted to clarify one piece of information that was shared by Ms. Debbie Torres with regards to the street investments, something to keep in mind and something that has been shared during the city council meetings and by city staff repeatedly. One of the reasons that we're coming forward with the proposed or the request here for the capital improvements projects, keep in mind bonds are not the only option for us in terms of improvements. There's always funding from the federal and state grants that we're looking at. So it's still important to share that information. Related to the street improvements, something to keep in mind, we're working for the last 7 to 8 years on catching up on years of neglect. And the street improvements that we're looking at, you're on an annual basis, if we were to be able to provide proper street maintenance, we're looking at $40 million a year. And we have about $10 million for pay-as-you-go funding in order to make improvements. for streets. This is not enough money. This is a very little money that we've been able to accomplish over the last 7 years with support of the city council members. And so in order to catch up with the years of neglect that we've seen in previous years, we are looking at ways to find funding to improve the streets that we have out there. So that is why we're coming to the public, in order to make sure we have an understanding of what are the full needs. And one of the repeated comments that we hear, as Ms. Torres had mentioned, are street improvements. And so that is part of the reason that we're asking you all to please help us look at what it is that we need to prioritize in terms of capital improvements.
All right, thank you, Laura. So we have about a minute left, all right. I don't know, Representative, if you're still on the line, I don't know if you want to close or have any other thoughts before we end the evening tonight?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alex. Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you all this evening. I hadn't seen that survey before, and I think y'all did a lot of thoughtful and hard work putting in those questions, and it's really interesting to see the questions and how they're going to formulate, so that as you mentioned, how important it is to get the opinion of our residents in El Paso. So I just want to thank all the people that went down to City Hall this evening and all the people that attended this meeting virtually. We do really value your opinion and your thoughts. And once again, thank you to the staff for your very hard work. I appreciate all of you. Have a good evening.
Representative, thank you all for attending. Thank you for visiting online. You joined us tonight, so thank you.
Yes.